inviting me here today. I'm going to hopefully demonstrate and discuss how we at Newcastle make use of NDL's RPA toolkit. We've been using the NDL suite for about, it's going to be 7 years in January. And we currently have around half a dozen or so actual robotic processes that we make use of. So I'm just going to talk you through a couple of them today. So the first one I want to talk about is with regards to eliminating repetitive and duplicate data entry. Obviously we've heard about this today. This came to us about 10 years. Our social workers in Newcastle were spending an inordinate amount of time actually rekeying information within the same system. Now, if a social worker is working with a family and they've got 3 kids, they have to record the same bit of information on each of those individual children's records. And back then, well, even now, the software wasn't up to it. You couldn't just say, I'm working with this family, put all this information straight into those 3 cases. So, obviously, initially, we contact our vendor. We would like. They said, OK, we'll wait. So we went on to their queue for their back catalogue for changes. So, and we waited and pushed, and we were at the user groups, etc. Nothing. Not enough people were wanting it, so it wasn't high enough on their agenda. So, I think at the time, I'm right, we had a family with 17 kids. Which basically meant that the social worker just, the system had her life. She was re-entering the same bit of information, 16 things. And it's just literally like, I've made a phone call to the GP into the next child. It takes about a minute, by the time you search for them, there's none of these hyperlinks into all of these favourite kids, etc., favourite families. So, she was spending almost 20 minutes just writing the same thing. And I'm sure she'll have Control-C, Control-V. So, that wasn't good enough, so we needed to come up with a different way. So we had some software already and corporately called SX. And we wanted to automate the data transfer from social worker writes it once, a couple of clicks, and the robot, behind the scenes, unbeknownst to them, goes away and does the integration. Okay. So, this is the activities recording screen in our social care system. So there's about 3 or 4 fields that the social worker actually has to fill in with some additional text. So we approached another one of our software vendors and said, can you copy this page? Just give us some boxes that allows us to do that. And then give us a little bit of additional functionality. So about 3 hours later, and about £500, we had a screen that looked very similar to, has all the fields, but with a tick box at the side. And all that is doing is just going off into our social care system, saying these are all the personal relationships for that person. So the social worker fills in the screen once, ticks those boxes, quick confirmation, and an XML file is written off and goes off into a work queue where a robot will pick it up. Simple. Everything is just happening kind of behind the scenes. So we operate, I think it's 5 or 6 virtual desktops that just handle these queues. So we get multiple XMLs coming through every minute. So to keep the queue down, to keep it as real time as possible, if we need to, we just increase those virtual desktops to handle the load. From time to time, when the network is slow or the system's busy, sometimes integration loses its way. It happens, a social worker could. They could take a phone call, have a chat with a colleague, etc. It happens, it's acceptable. However, we can build that in, a bit of artificial intelligence in there, so that it stops what it's doing. It's got lost, sends an email to a member of IT or me, and it'll just stop, park that one, and I'll have to go in and give it a kick up the bum, and then just kick it off again. But, no big deal. On a daily basis, it reports out how many it's done, sends an email to IT, I've processed 4,000 files today, etc. Bit of SQL, check it, done what it said. Very, very simple. So, the results. We're coming up for 7 years utilising this robot. We average around about 2,500 to 3,000 submits a month. Not massive numbers, granted, but in there there's 6,000 to 7,000 activities. And they're the free activities, i.e. they've entered them once, everything else is free. So in the coming up, sorry, it's nearly 6 years, I apologise, not 7 years. So there's about 231,000 free records in those 6 years, which equates to about 260 staffing days, which is approximately £75,000 a year. Social workers, happy. My boss is happy. Social workers, managers are happy. They get to spend more time with the families which they were employed and trained to do. Fantastic. So now, robotics in Newcastle Council is called Jobotics. And I didn't name it myself. It is banded around like some sort of superhero at times, and I do wonder what the heck I've got myself into when I'm sitting in meetings. But where possible, if we think we can save the user time, and primarily it is around social work, but I've got a few more examples that I'm going to take you through as well. We'll employ the robot or the Jobot to do this. You know, and it's quite bizarre. Even some of our own software vendors are aware of what we do. In the initial days, they used to change the tab orders of the screens at every upgrade just to wind me up. Sure of it. But, you know, an hour of downtime scheduled, we just reprofile the robot. It's dead easy. Probably doesn't even take half an hour, to be honest. And it was only last week that one of our actual software vendors, they were demonstrating a new piece of software, what it could do. And we were like, well, how are you going to do it? And we're like, we're going to use your Jobot. All right, okay, then. News to me. Okay. This next one's quite close to my heart, to be honest, because I actually work in IT. Now, following on from a series of large hardware and software failures within our council, it was decided that a senior member of IT had to be on their desk at 7 a.m, on their seat at 7 a.m, and validate that all of our core applications were operational. So we have about 200 corporate applications within Newcastle, and 20 of them are classed as essential and business critical. So, you know, although we all appreciated that that needed to happen, being a member of that team, I was not relishing it. You know, I live 30 miles away. I have kids. You know, we did envisage actually sleeping in server rooms, etc. Worst case, we'd have had to dial in, but even so, you know, it still wouldn't have been a great thing. So. Yeah, the robot sprang to mind. So again, using SX, we have a daily checks robot. And at 7 a.m. every morning, it, like an end user would, logs into our core applications. Assuming it's not come across any errors using OCR, etc. We check the screen, make sure there's no error or pop-ups come up. The results get displayed on plasma screens within IT, which thankfully junior members of IT can check and not ourselves. And if there are any errors, those bottom two lines at the end there are saying, you know, there was an error accessing care first, there was an error accessing total view. So a member of the help desk staff who is in at that time to cover can just check and validate if there was really an issue, if the robot was lying, or just report to a service manager that there might be an outage and we're looking at it. Soft key integration of CRM systems. Now, this is actually an attended integration. We saw a similar one earlier on for I think it was the DWP. Now, the challenge was that customers, we get about 400 to 800 calls per day about council tax alone. So when a customer calls in, the contact centre staff have to go and check the council tax system and find that person. So we piloted an attended integration with about three of the teams in our contact centre. It's about 30 staff. So now when a council tax call comes into our Lagan CRM, this bottom bit here on the left-hand side is the person who's called in, and our telephony software automatically brings that up as long as they're known in the system. I designed a very grey looking button, but nevertheless it still works. Top right hand corner, we have a launch Northgate button. So all that happens is when the operative clicks that button, it just takes over the screen, goes off into our Northgate system, finds the person. If there's more than one, it leaves them at the results screen to make the operative decide what they want to do. It's between 30 and 60 seconds, depending on how quick our network is. However, we get between 400 and 800 calls a day. And, you know, it's an absolute no-brainer, really, from that point of view. Now, we have already discussed improving this. You know, it is very minor, but it's high impact. But we are waiting for for example, our council tax reference numbers and our housing benefit reference numbers, etc., to be in that bottom corner. At the moment, they're not there. We're waiting for other integration, which, to be honest, I'll probably end up using my robot to actually put them in anyway. Once we've got that, we've got a one-to-one match. We can actually go straight in and pull up and go straight into their record. So yeah, one of the key issues that the contact centre staff actually highlighted was that because they're not able to find these members of the public in the systems, or they're unknown to us when they actually dial in, they end up creating lots of duplicate records, etc. So obviously there is improved data recording. Okay, going back to social care, Ofsted, and you know, Ofsted are coming, this department's coming, we've got this inspection. My God, we've not been recording something correctly. Here's a load of data from health that we need to record dead quickly. Dental checks for looked after children. All these immunisations to go in, updating things. So we just get it in Excel, give it to a robot, keep an eye on it, and just away it goes. I mean, I had one last week. I had to enter 16,000 classifications into Care First. Well, the robot did. And it took me probably 40 minutes to program it to do it. It's just so simple, so straightforward. There is no teams. We don't employ any consultants. You are looking at him. So, yeah, it's just so straightforward. If I had a brand new system that I needed to actually design and profile, as long as I've got an understanding of where you need to click and flow and what you need to press, it's fine. You know, it doesn't take long at all. Okay, slightly out of transition order here, but this one normally gets a bit of a laugh, but never mind. Right, senior management emails. Our senior managers, again, we're talking in social care. They even refer to themselves as dinosaurs. Sorry, that's the order it should be in. Specifically when we need to authorise and sign things like expenditure approvals and things like that. Chase the manager, hunt the manager down. Our senior managers do not check the CRM systems for messages and notifications and triggers for them to action stuff. They want to do everything via Outlook. So rather than having the managers have to go in and check on these things, everyone's got their iPhones or smartphones or whatever. They're able to get hold of their email anywhere. So we just schedule hourly checks of triggers within the system, as long as there is a payment authorization or a permanence recommendation, or this child needs to be looked at for adoption purposes, etc. Things that need a manager or a senior manager decision upon. We have a query, schedule it, a little bit of SQL. Based on that SQL, it'll ping an email off to that manager. It doesn't give any information, it'll just be a client reference number. You've received this, an EAF, expenditure approval form, authorization required. Can you log in to Care First and check, please? So our social workers no longer have to print an EAF off and then go and find a manager and sit there and wait for them to authorise it, etc. It's just done automatically. Obviously, it's far more lean. It's auditable. Senior manager can't come back to me and say, we didn't receive the email. Actually, you did, because I BCC myself into them all, so I know it's working. It saves so much time, saves the paper, and to date, we have probably, I think it's about 24 different triggering systems that make use of this. And all that happens is it just gets written into a SQL database, make use of a piece of NDL's software called QX, and it just goes off and pings them, works through them systematically. So, coming up to 7 years of use, I think we've very much well milked the investment that we've made in the software. You know, I do wish I had more time to actually do more of these integrations, particularly with all of our digital first and transformation and portals and everything else going on. You know, I think it's a very cost-effective and flexible solution. You know, we make it linked to the front office. There's no need. We're not in breach of any of our software providers' kind of licensing. You know, so we're able to actually join systems that just have no integration or no API capability and get them actually in line with some of our own business processes in-house. So, yeah, before I leave you, I think this is a quote by me. I've been quoted on it. All of the learning on the software is done right at the very start. You know, once we have the knowledge, the only thing that's stopping us is my time or other members of IT's time to actually do it. It's flexible. It can be deployed in almost any scenario. Thank you.